You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension, a dimension of truth, a dimension of freedom, a dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
Welcome to the Capitalist Corner. I'm your host, Mark Pellegrino, and also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and vice chair, Michael Liebowitz, who is also helming this entire channel, which is called The Rational Alternative, which has multiple shows for your enjoyment, folks. If you're sick and tired of the crazy tribal fighting, come to this channel and you can get a dose of much needed reason. Michael, what's going on in your shows?
Well, today, later on, and you just reminded me, I have to edit a video I did, an interview I did with the economist Adam Michel, where we're discussing taxes on the wealthy. I hope to have that out by tonight on The Rational Egoist and on 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Today, Persephone and I will be doing Everyday Ethics as long as she comes up with a good topic.
Very good. Remember to like and subscribe to this channel, folks, because we need to get the word out there that rational egoism is good and that capitalism is good, to counter all those statist cucks out there who keep pressing commie propaganda on us. I know I hate that, Michael. I think you're indifferent to it, but it really frosts me.
What? What? It frosts you?
It frosts me. Yeah, it really makes me mad.
Did you mention super chats and super stickers?
That's for you to do. I was just going to tell you to do that.
Well, we really love these super chats and super stickers. They help quite a bit. Also, follow us on Twitch. I don't think Mark mentioned that. And, you can become a member of our channel, The Rational Alternative, where you can get an abundance of special perks. Now, I got to tell my dogs to shut up, so hold on.
Yeah, folks. So we got a lot of news to talk about today, and we're going to talk a little bit about some founding principles as well, because we're coming up to our 250th anniversary as a nation, and we think that we've fallen quite far from the Republican ideals that were established in the founding, and we'd like to get back to those ideas, plus with some additional rational liberalism thrown in to make it more consistent. But I think what's really headlining, at least on our banner there, Michael, is the deal with Iran, which Trump has been threatening for weeks upon weeks upon weeks. In fact, he's really put a leash on Netanyahu, and Netanyahu is battling Hezbollah right now in the south of Lebanon. Of course, Hezbollah has been attacking Haifa and northern Israel. And in retaliation, Israel fires back at Hezbollah headquarters and has been seizing territory in the south of Lebanon to create a buffer zone, all in self-defense, of course. But Trump, of course, feels that this will jeopardize his deal with Iran, because Iran has stipulated as part of their conditions for their ceasefire and for all hostilities to end, that Hezbollah and the war with Israel also be brought into the fold as part of the negotiating deal here, which is unfortunate, but it's the way things are, Michael. And so this deal has been threatened for a long time. We didn't know whether Trump was lying, whether the Iranians are lying. They're both pathological liars. So we don't know. It comes out that there is something in the works, but Trump, of course, is exaggerating what's in the works, and the Iranians are denying what he's claiming. And so we're still this tit for tat, he said, she said kind of world where we don't really know what's going to happen. But we do know, Michael, that the stock market rose and rises every time Trump says we're going to get a deal. Leads me to believe he's doing some insider trading, man. But go ahead.
Maybe. Persephone, I sent you a post from Donald Trump on Truth Social. Can you put that up here so I can share it with the group? Yeah. I mean, it's one... I can't even comment on this anymore. I mean, I can, but it's very difficult because it's the same shit every time. They're begging for a deal. They're begging for a deal. They want a deal so bad. We're this close to a deal. We're going to end this. Then he threatens them. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. And then he comes up and says, okay, they've now agreed to this deal. They turn around and say, no, we haven't agreed to it. Then they put out the terms of the deal, what they're claiming, and then the Trump and his administration say this. The terms that Iran leaked out to the fake news have nothing to do with the terms that were agreed to in writing. What they have said, including their weak and pathetic statement on having a deal, bears no relation to the truth. Very dishonorable people to deal with. With them, there's no such thing as dealing in good faith. Amazing. Also, their totally rebuffed drone attack last night against Indian ships leaving the Hormuz Strait is totally, what's that say? Open for trade, it says, Persephone? Okay, I got to do this because I have to read this. Totally unacceptable. They better get their act together and fast.
And I really mean it this time.
And I really mean it this fast. So here's the thing. If they're totally dishonorable people who don't negotiate in good faith, why has he spent 2 months negotiating with them?
Well, Michael, I think he feels like he's looking at the mirror, in his alter ego. So perhaps he feels like, hey, these guys are clever like me. They string people along. They've read the art of the deal too. So, and maybe in some way he feels, as much as he's posturing as hating these guys, he's feeling like he's seeing alike personalities across the aisle. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
I do. It's just, God, I don't know. And you got all the MAGA, no, I'm calling it MAGA, all the MAGA influencers out there. They're all, Trump, the genius, he's won it again, he's done it again. Gas prices are going to be going down any minute now. And it's just, come on, people. Persephone put something up here. I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to add it so we can see.
Major points of agreement. They want to make a deal. And we are very willing to make a deal.
Well, I think we're going to end it. I can't tell you for
Okay, so I do know what this is now, and I'm going to start it over. This is a montage that I believe CNN put together of Trump saying that the war is over, that he's won, yada, yada, yada. So let's just check this out.
We have major points of agreement. They want to make a deal. And we are very willing to make a deal.
Well, I think we're going to end it. I can't tell you for sure when they want to make a deal so badly. You have no idea how badly they want to make a deal.
They want to make a deal so badly. I do see a deal in Iran. We were very close to a deal.
I think it's close to over, yeah. I view it as very close to over.
It's looking very good that we're going to make a deal with Iran, and it's going to be a good deal. This process should go very quickly. We're going to end that war very quickly. They want to make a deal so badly. We think we're close to a deal, and that's okay. We're in the final throes of what will be a very, very good deal.
Today makes 39 times that he has said something like that.
Oh, when you see it all together, Michael, it just, we already think it's a clown show, but it really, really highlights what a clown show it really is. And how much do you want to bet, Michael, that they don't get the fissile material out of Iran, that they end up releasing those frozen assets, they end up taking the embargo off of the Iranian people, and don't get a fucking thing in return?
Well, one of the things that Trump said, let me see if I can find it here, is it's in the works that they may, I think it's from, hold on, I want to make sure that I get this right. Maybe it was from the AP. But one of the things that they've said they might do is, I don't know the exact word for it, but basically go in to Iran and not take the uranium out, but downgrade it. Bring it down to lower levels of enrichment. That was in one of the articles. We've got a bunch of them. Like you're saying, this is the Iranian Foreign Ministry told state television following Trump's comments that mediators were active, but nothing had been finalized to end the conflict. And it's just Trump's talking about they've taken a pounding,
Hey, James Valiant says maybe it's our Arab allies who are driving this. James, I suspect that the Arab allies, quote unquote, and it's proper to scare quote them, were actually on board with a full regime change in Iran. It would have served their geopolitical interests just as it would have served ours. But now that they see that the president is vacillating so much, I think they're a little bit concerned what that means with respect to Iran shooting ballistic missiles at their energy sites, civilian sites, military sites. And so they're interested in concluding this as quickly as possible because they see a lack of follow through and strategic thinking on the part of the president. So to me, this is more a reaction on their part to what they're being confronted with in the White House. Would you agree with that, Michael, or do you have a different perspective?
What I want, first of all, I want Persephone to do something for me. Persephone, I heard something on the ride. I had to go for a drive this morning, and I heard something about how much longer it would actually take of bombing Iran to meet the administration's stated objectives of how much they wanted to degrade Iran. It wasn't like 2 days, I can tell you that, but I want Persephone to find it. Mark, I was looking at something. I didn't catch exactly what you said, but from what
go ahead.
No, I mean, look.
You repeat?
No, what I want you. Yeah, you go ahead because I do want to talk about that, but I want to say something else too. Go ahead.
So I get the sense that at the beginning of the conflict, many of the quote unquote Arab allies were on board with total regime change because I think it would affect positively their geopolitical position there, since Iran was trying to assert hegemony over the entire region. Now that they've been confronted with a Trump who's unwilling to complete the task, I think they're just making pragmatic moves at this point and trying to conclude the process as much as possible because Iran is attacking them in lieu of attacking us.
Well, not only that, but it's obvious that to anybody with a half a brain that Trump is not going to do what's necessary. Now, look, he's not the most predictable guy. So it's still in the realm of possibility that he loses patience and just does something that is totally unexpected, right? I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying to count on that is absurd. And for anybody out there that's still supporting this or still thinks it was a good idea to support it to begin with, like, what would it take? Somebody said to me this morning, and I made a Facebook post about it. Somebody said to me this morning that, they haven't declared war since World War II. Grow up. They don't do that anymore. By that logic, I mean, they've been infringing on the First Amendment since 1798, so we just shouldn't cite that anymore either. We shouldn't be concerned with that. They've been infringing on the Second Amendment for a while now, too. I guess we give up on that. Due process, I know a lot of people who had their due process rights violated, so screw that, too. Let's just throw it all out the window, because once the government creates the precedent that they're going to violate rights, we should no longer invoke the principles that the country was founded upon. We should just shut our mouths and follow along. No fucking way from this guy. Sorry, not going to happen. I want the Constitution upheld. It's important. It's not some disconnected, rationalistic document. It's the founding document of this country, and it embodies a lot of sound principles. So I don't know. What's it going to take? Do people that are still supporting it? I mean, why can't you just come out and say, you know what, I was wrong? No, what I've seen some people do and say, no, but it was still good because they killed Khomeini. You didn't say that, though, at the beginning, right? At the beginning of the war, those people were not saying, you know what, if all they accomplish is killing Khomeini, I'm happy with that. Nobody said that. We were seeing free Iran. The people of Iran were going to be free. Trump promised them help. Help is on the way. We got to take out the regime. The Pahlavi's going to be stepping in. Those were the type of things we were hearing. I didn't hear from a single soul that they would be okay, that they would still support it, even if it was going to mean you're going to kill Khomeini, do a lot of bombing, and then Trump is going to threaten them a lot, not follow through, and constantly on the world stage talk about how we're this close to a deal and not reach it. Who would have supported the war if they knew that was going to happen? I really want to know.
And Michael, the caricature that you just drew about people just giving up the principles of the Constitution, because after all, the First Amendment has been violated almost from the beginning. The Second Amendment has been violated over years and years and years. The due process has been violated by multiple administrations. So why not just give up on it? This is precisely what is happening now. Even some objectivists who were for the war, hawks for the Iranian war, have called us. have called us sort of religiously following a 250-year-old document that we shouldn't follow anymore because it doesn't relate to the current geopolitical problems, Michael. So even they are starting to jettison the concept of restrained government, and even grasping that the Constitution is a fairly good document if followed properly for restraining the power of government and retaining the liberties of the citizens.
Right. So Ian Gilmore says he's seen Ilya Soman interviewed. He's a constitutional law professor. And he says that's not even true. There have been a form of declaration for most wars since World War II. So, I don't know if you're referring to the interview I did with him, but I interviewed Ilya Soman on this very program. And it's not even true. It's true they haven't actually said we declare war. But Iraq and Iran Iraq and Afghanistan were both authorized. There was the Gulf of Tonkin resolution authorizing use of force in Vietnam. So, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the first Gulf War was authorized as well, but I might be wrong about that. But yes, there has been congressional authorizations. Much of what the crowd says that argues that the Constitution doesn't matter or the Constitution allows it, their facts are just wrong over and over and over again.
But what hasn't happened is a congressional declaration of war, which would mean that the president would have to really make a case before the representatives of the people, and the Congress would have to really go out on a limb, Michael. I mean, declaring war is very different from congressional approval for the executive using the armed forces in the way that it feels is prudent. So again, Congress is giving up its congressional power and oversight and creating an executive that has way, way too much power, and it's time to pull back. Michael, you sent me an article in Reason magazine about Thomas Piketty, and this was really fucking disturbing.
Yes.
And I've heard about the no growth movement for a little while now, where economists, scientists have gotten together and they've determined that in order to save the planet, and I don't even know if that's the intended goal anymore, but it started out with the environmentalist movement. In order to save the planet, Michael, we have to start downsizing, not growing anymore. And the infamous economist Thomas Piketty, who wrote a book that has become, I guess, a darling of the left, despite its all of its errors, it's still upheld as showing on a scientific and academic level why inequality is probably, income inequality is probably the most potent issue in modern times. Of course, we as thinking human beings disagree with that. But he's made quite a splash in academia, and now this no growth movement, with him as the lead intellectual, is also making headway in the halls of elites who are determined to take control of our lives and control our economics for the greater good, whatever they imagine. Michael, this really fucking scares me, man. There's nothing scarier than an academic who is dying to be relevant. And in order to fulfill that desire, postulates ideas that put him in control of every choice that we make.
Yeah, it's definitely not capitalism, right? Veronica DeRugi, who wrote the article you're referencing, talked about Thomas Piketty as he's a real-life Randian villain. Like, she says the people that have said that Ayn Rand's villains couldn't actually exist basically should look at this guy. Yeah, I mean, do you have the stats in front of you, Mark?
Yeah.
Like what he wants to do. Like, he has a specific plan for degrowth.
Yeah, this is really scary. So Piketty's plan would cap gross domestic product, GDP, per capita in wealthy countries to roughly $69,000, far less than America's current $94.5 thousand. The plan would limit annual global economic growth to between 0% and 0.5%. Piketty would allot only 0.115% annual growth to the U.S., whose GDP has expanded by more than 3% on average since 1930. And Michael, 3% is anemic. I mean, 3% is growing despite the fact that the regulatory state is growing, despite the fact of monetary policy inhibiting growth and also draining private resources and funds and capital into less productive things. And this would just not just hurt billionaires, but every person. The plan would mandate international 3-day work week, a 3-day work week. And that means you and I couldn't do a show every day, by the way. And that means you couldn't work on Saturdays or Sundays or any other day for that matter, except for the 3 days that these elites planned. They would reduce construction activity by 70%, manufacturing by 87%, and even leisure sector activity by 58%. So you'll not only have less resources, Michael, you'll have less space to live in. You'll have less food and access to resources that you need to live. You can't even fucking enjoy yourself. You can't even in the 4 days that you'll have off from the mandated vacation that the statists will allot to you. You can't do anything fun, for fuck's sake. God knows what you're going to do. And there would be massive punishing trade actions against non-compliant countries. So, to me, Michael, if you restrain the economy to such a degree that you can't build out, you can't build up, and you're not going to be manufacturing goods anymore so that resources can be accessible to people, you are begging to kill billions of human beings.
Yes. Now, in addition, by the way, to the sort of degrowth consequences, what about the type of organization that would have to be built in order to enforce this?
So,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd be talking about a government, the scope of which we've never seen.
Unheard of. And there's more here, Michael. It envisions a global justice fund financed not by taxing carbon, but by global wealth and income taxes. I mean, how do you say the end to capital, period, except by this? And it says this fund would be 20 times the size of current development aid and would be administered by new international bureaucracy answerable to heaven knows who. And what's really funny about this, Michael, I don't know if it says this in the article, but it's just a conclusion you have to draw, is that these crazy statist schemes depend upon productive capital to fund them, while at the same time destroying the productive capital that will fund them.
Right. They're going to stop capital from developing, and then they're going to redistribute the capital that's not there. The author even says, don't be fooled by Piketty's training as an economist. This is not economic thinking. And then she gets into what you just talked about. But this, I mean, I'm sorry if you already mentioned it, but it warrants repeating, I think. Piketty's plan would cap gross domestic product per capita in wealthy countries at roughly $69,000. America right now is at $94,430.
That's
per
a third,
capita.
a third of a cut to your wealth,
Yeah.
to your productive capacity. That is like unprecedented. That is going to create poverty.
Right. Now, we do on the home front, occasionally we do get some good news. And I don't know if this is actually going to pass, but who are the two guys here? It's Ted Cruz and somebody else. Ron Wyden. Ted Cruz and Ron Wyden have teamed up to offer a consistent and principled response to the dangers of jawboning, which is it's indirect censorship where the government, usually the president, uses the bully pulpit to threaten media companies. They better not do this. They better not do that. So Wyden and Cruz are putting together a package that, a bill that would allow people to sue the government when this happens. And, I think that's a good thing. What do you think about it?
It's certainly a step in the right direction, Michael. I wish the First Amendment was enough. I wish courts actually defended the First Amendment and private property and the rights of people to speak, their individual citizens and even people who own social media companies to speak in whatever fashion they choose. This is not the case, however, and the government has, unfortunately, Michael, the government has encroached on freedom of speech for a long time. There's a long, illustrious history of this. You can go ahead and start talking about that.
I will. Something's wrong with your microphone. Try to fix it. Okay, so Theodore Roosevelt pioneered using the presidency as a bully pulpit for public persuasion. John Adams signed the Sedition Act. Now, this goes to what we were just talking about before, all the encroachments on the First Amendment, for instance. The Sedition Act, leading prosecutions of critical journalists. Abraham Lincoln suppressed newspapers during the Civil War. Barack Obama criticized for aggressive war on leaks. He prosecuted more Espionage Act cases than prior administrations, including he surveilled Fox News journalist James Rosen. He created an insider threat program. It also publicly criticized Fox News as not legitimate. Donald Trump publicly attacks fake media, fake news, pressured Boeing and Lockheed Martin over costs via tweets, asked Twitter to remove a tweet by Christy Teigen. In his second term, he's used rapid response social media, memes, and influence, while officials like Brendan Carr have threatened broadcasters, and Trump, of course, posting on Truth Social. Joe Biden saw extensive documented efforts, especially during COVID. Who the fuck do these people think they are, right? I mean, they are supposed to be our servants. They're supposed to be upholding the United States Constitution. They're not supposed to be threatening media companies who report information that they don't like. But again, so let me ask you this, Mark, right? I think this is good. I don't think they should do it. I don't think that presidents and other politicians should be doing this type of stuff. I think it's already unconstitutional. But I think it's good that we're now going to have a remedy for people. But how do people who have said, in the instance of the war, well, they always violate it, how do they defend now against this? What are their arguments? What do they say? They've left themselves without a means of combating things that they don't like.
Yeah, well, they're also there. Is my microphone better, by the way?
It is, but you know what you forgot to do today?
What did I forget to do?
Announce that it was Open Question Friday. I'm looking and I'm like, why aren't we getting?
I knew I was gonna do that. Yeah, it's Q&A day, guys. It's Friday. So come up with questions. It could be about anything. It doesn't have to be about politics, capitalism.
Yeah. Please somebody ask Mark about his hair. That's what I would love to see a question about.
All right. Usually I wake up and my hair looks great just because I have the dew that is somehow had the bed head just works. Yeah. But today, Michael, something went wrong. I don't know. I don't know if I slept wrong or whatever, but I'm an open book kind of guy, and I'm okay with coming on like this. I don't care. I like myself regardless of how my hair looks.
Are you saying that you have the dew that keeps on doing?
I do have the dew that keeps on doing.
All right, I want to tell you something real quick. I'm going to digress, and then you can tell me about the constitutional stuff. I went to school with a kid, right, and he had ears that did this, right? Poor kid.
Yeah, like teacup handles. They stuck out.
Right.
There's surgery for that, by the way.
Okay. So he's my age, so he's probably 50 by now, at least 49. So I saw a picture of him on Facebook, and he wears a hat, and he tucks his ear in under the hat. And I just thought, in relation to what you just said, because I'm basically the same way. I don't really care. I mean, I want to look presentable most of the time, but whatever. But to be at that point in life and you're still covering up the ears that you're insecure about from your child,
that's sad.
It is. It's tough. Persephone says, what's wrong with the hair? Okay, Persephone, stop sucking up. Okay, we're going to answer you, Megan. We're not going to answer Randy, but we're going to answer Megan. But first, I want Mark to answer my question about the...
What was your question, by the way? I forget now.
Okay, Mark is old. My question had to do with the people who have turned their backs on the Constitution in order to support this war. What do they say when you have the government officials violating free speech? I mean, are you going to still cite the First Amendment and act as if you didn't completely shit on the Constitution or toss it out the window a month ago?
Well, Michael, look, every party, whatever party is not in power will always cite the Constitution as a means of restraining the power of the party that happens to be in power. But once they get in that position and hold the levers, they then throw away the Constitution. It no longer matters to them. I mean, Trump was one of these guys that was screaming about social media, censorship and the union between the government and Facebook, and rightfully so. But the second he gets into office, he starts weaponizing his own capacity to do the very same thing the Biden administration was doing. So Washington feared that the rise of parties would also mean party men. So the political world would be occupied by people more interested in preserving the party line than in actually working to maintain a free republic. And this is precisely the state we are in now. The politicians now are interested only in gaining levers of power. They think only to the next election. They don't care about their fiduciary responsibility to the American people anymore. And so they will only say the right things, as many Democrats are saying now with respect to constitutional restraints, when it serves them, just to get your vote. And once they get your vote, they're going to do exactly what the administration previous has done. So they don't care about the inconsistencies if it allows them to have power, Michael.
Well, it's a good thing there's this new political party out there, Mark. I don't know if you want to mention it.
Yeah, there's this great political party, folks. It's actually about principles. It actually is about individual rights and actually about inviolable property rights. And it would roll back this government juggernaut that is taking over your life. And it's called the American Capitalist Party. And you can find it at americancapitalistparty.org. Donate to the cause, folks. Be a part of the change. Let's break the duopoly stranglehold on America. And let's actually bring us back to the principles of individual rights and progress us forward with real liberalism.
I think they're having a convention, and there's some speakers too lined up. If I'm not
there
mistaken.
are. We're having it in the September 19th and 20th in Pittsburgh. Is that right? Did I get the date right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. In Pittsburgh, PA. I'm speaking. You're speaking. Honig is speaking. Your friend Carlos is speaking, who is also a great self-made man. I think everybody should listen to guys like Michael and Carlos.
Kaya Willis.
The great Kaya Willis. If you follow her on Twitter, her social media is amazing. I don't think she's ever missed a beat. She should be much more popular than she is. But of course, guys like Yaron Brook and all the people who stand for reason, us, should be a lot more popular out there than the Tucker Carlsons and Candace Owens of the world. Give us time. We'll appeal to the rational elements out there, and we will win because we have reality on our side.
Okay, so now there is a question here before we get to Joseph Warren. Megan, well, first, she says, what are the titles of your talks? I don't think we've gotten there just yet. But Megan wants to know, why did anybody listen to John Dewey? By the way, Megan and I are going to be discussing Mr. Dewey tomorrow on Capitalist Corner Weekend, 12 noon Eastern Time on the Rational Alternative channel on YouTube. Great notes, too, by the way, Megan, on that. So why did anybody listen to John Dewey? The short answer is I don't know. But ultimately, there's intellectual trends that take place. Things become the fancy of everybody. People like to experiment. They like to seem smarter than everybody else. And I think Dewey allowed people to do that.
I have another point of view
other
about
than
that.
Other than that, I really don't know. I've often wondered, for instance, if you have two people that are honest, and I know that this happens, and they read the same book, but they come to different conclusions, and they're both honest, both smart. And I often wonder what's happening. Where do they turn? Where do they go this way? Where do they go that way? And the answer is a lot of the times I just don't know.
Well, Megan, I think the left has a bit of a monopoly on people who are very good with words. Now, I just read Jack London's version of The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. It's called The Iron Heel, and it is a terrible book about the hero. Michael is Ernest Everhard. Now, that's not his porn name. That connotes
That's
his.
crazy. That's what they used to call me in high school.
Well, look, what distinguishes this guy is he's the Howard Rourke of socialists. He's an entirely principled guy who lives by those principles, and he's a professional revolutionary that kicks off a revolution in the early 20th century world that London envisions. Of course, it's the oligarchs versus the proletariat. It's ugly, disgusting, despicable revolution, and this guy is the spokesperson for it. And despite the awfulness of it, I wrote a review for it. It's on my Patreon if you want to see it. It's an eloquent rendition of that version of reality. The narrative is interesting enough to keep a guy like me interested in the book. John Dewey was a good communicator. Now, he communicated shit ideas, but he was a good communicator, just like Upton Sinclair was a good storyteller. And they couched these. I mean, look. The Jungle is a terrible book. It was completely false, but it sparked the Food and Drug, the Pure Food, the Clean Food Act in the early 19th 20th century, and sparked. It was a inspiration to the progressive political movement, which of course is now morphed into the democratic socialist movement, which it was all along. But because they tell very good stories. Objectivists need to be able to tell very good stories. Now, I love Ayn Rand, but to be honest with you, she's didactic. Some of her stuff comes off as preachy. It comes off, all the characters have similar voices. They sound all like philosophers. Now, look, what she did was a gigantic task that is unparalleled, I think, in literature. And it's easy for me to sit back and take a book like that is one of the greatest books in the history of literature and say, I have issues with it. But if it were told in a better narrative style, for example, like her book, We the Living, which I think is one of her greatest books ever written, because it's just narrative. It's just narrative. And the pro-individualist ideals come across through the narrative. They're not explicitly stated as they are in Atlas Shrugged. Now, granted, she's writing a book explicitly about philosophy and about the way in which the mind is actually the lever that moves the earth. So she had to be explicit, because she was working the principles out for herself in real time. But we need more of these Jack London types in the objectivist movement, people who can really write great stories. Period.
Oh, I'm glad you threw the period on at the end there.
Yeah, I had
Megan, you had to? Well, Megan wants to know, because what?
Because you didn't know that I was over. I was done.
I would know when you're done and when you stop talking.
Not necessarily.
Then how do we ever communicate without you throwing in a period at the end? We do all
barely.
the time.
We don't really.
We communicate on the telephone.
It's mostly ellipses. It's me trying to get a word in edgewise as you talk over me. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, poor Persephone. Okay. So Megan has a question. Should the Constitution include something about constraining deficit spending? ? So, I don't know, Megan. The problem is they could put it there. The question is, do they then abide by it? Because if they don't care, you could pass whatever law you want. You could put whatever in the Constitution you want. If they're not going to abide by it and the people of the country don't care, then it doesn't matter. I mean, they've got the debt ceiling. Right, you can only borrow this much. Well, I think we can lift that a little bit and let us borrow some more, and it becomes just a formality. So I think that what we need really is a revolution in the way that people in this country think, and that takes a lot. It takes a lot of different sort of avenues. Mark pointed out having people that can communicate in writing. I think that's important. I think people that do this, what we're doing, that's important. Intellectuals, in colleges, get more of those. It's a tough process. If I had to say the one thing that I think is really necessary, and when you have complex ideas, it's incredibly difficult, is having people that communicate simply and are able to really communicate complex ideas in a simple way. I struggle with it. I don't know that I'm the guy that can do it. I mean, I can make arguments, I can win debates, but I don't know how to take the ideas that I'm debating and make them, ready for your average person. That's what needs to be done. And again, it's not an easy task.
Yeah, and I think the like Michael said, there is already a debt ceiling limit that Congress pushes every time they're faced with a financial crisis. They just raise the debt ceiling. It really doesn't make any difference to them. You have to put in the Constitution something that
separates politics with economics. Otherwise, so long as the government thinks that and or the people think that the government's purpose is to create equitable social circumstances or to assume responsibility for other people's lives and interfere in private transactions in order to do that, and to try to provide goods and services to people. So long as people think the government is like that, the government will have to deficit spend. It will simply have to do it. So you have to put in place an amendment that separates the state and economics. But you're never going to get the supermajority of legislatures to make that amendment possible until and unless you're able to take down the spoil system democracy that we have right now and replace it with real representative Republican government. And that takes a revolution of ideas. And as Michael said, that's what we're in the midst of right now, is trying to push ideas out there in the world that are frankly not popular. Reason is less popular than faith-oriented ideas because faith is easy, reason's hard. It requires, right? And so people want the quick answers. I get questions from students all the time. How do you become a successful actor? They don't like my answers because they're not magic pills. And reason is not a magic pill either, because it requires will, self-direction, work, and constant attention. Because you are always having to learn, change, adjust, grow. And Michael, there's only two directions you can go. You can never really stay the same as a living being. You're either living and growing and getting better, or you are dying. That's sort of the way it is. So, but living consciously for your values is difficult.
Yeah.
And what we're asking people to do is take the road less traveled by, the harder path. And they don't want that. It's not popular today.
So Persephone throws this in here. Also tend to bring guns to pillow fights, which seems crazy. So now I'm going to have to clarify what it is she's talking about. Very inside baseball stuff. So Persephone started an argument with me yesterday off the air. A debate, and then we both had to go. So then she comes with what she thinks is this definitive evidence that's going to knock me out of the park, and then I realized immediately that she was asking the wrong question. So I responded and did what I do, and then I told her, Persephone, please don't bring a rock to a gunfight. Come on. And then she says, yeah, but why do you have? She says to me,
you said a rock. You didn't even say a knife. You said a rock.
Rock. Yeah. And so she says to me, but why do you have to bring the gun? And I said, do you even know me? But so that's what that's all about. Race Jacobson says, reason takes effort and mental passivity is popular. I don't want to say laziness because some people are legitimately dumb. All right. Nice shot to take at some folks there, Race. The dummies. Okay, and I don't know if you knew this, Mark. Did you know that dumb, a lot of people don't know, dumb ends in a B?
Yes. Wait a minute. Did I just walk into something?
No, you didn't see you didn't see where Trump said that?
No.
Oh, Trump said most people don't know the word dumb ends in a B. I can't believe you didn't know that.
This is just like the sea, not looking, but the actual body of water. Some people get them confused.
So he comes up with this word Democrats, right? And he doesn't, and his daughter-in-law is interviewing him. And she says, where did you come up with this word Democrat? I mean, first of all, like, really? It's like you're talking to a child. Oh, how did you do that, honey? Right? So he says, well, what I did was I replaced the E with a U in the word democracy. And he says, and you don't need the B, basically, I don't remember the exact word. He said, because most people don't even know it ends in a B. And so somebody pointed out, whenever he says that, it means he just found out.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. This guy, I mean, what did he go through life thinking you spelled dumb, D-U-M?
He's the leader of the free world, Michael.
Yeah.
This is insane.
Not only that, but he has a stronger following, more dedicated following than any politician I've ever seen in my life, and it's not close.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think the hatred on the right for being marginalized by the left and condemned to like perennial stupidity and to be looked down on and condescended to for decades upon decades upon decades has built up like a huge reservoir of rage in these people. And they think Trump is their guy. They think he's the one fighting the left. You know, they're primarily concerned about the culture wars and the left's takeover of the culture. And all they care about is trouncing the fucking left.
Yeah.
And they'll do it by any means possible.
You know, a lot of people don't know that the word culture ends in an E.
They
most
don't.
People,
You're right.
most people
Some
don't
even think it starts with a K, and I think that would probably be our esteemed president. Can we talk about somebody who's actually got substance?
Well,
Michael?
we've been doing this on the show. We've been talking about founding fathers, and I want to really get into some of the less known of the father.
Can I just say something about, because I know you're going to get into Dr. Joseph Warren, and he's one of my favorite dudes. I got to tell you, because. You know, he was sort of a patrician guy. He went to Harvard. I don't want to steal any of your thunder because you're just going to take over.
No,
from
it's
here.
fine. No, go.
What I particularly loved about him, and I hate to, to bring out sort of the potential punchline of this, but we're going to talk about his ideas in a minute, was the way he was willing to get right down into the trenches with everybody else. He wasn't a guy that just spoke about high ideals. He wasn't somebody who just wrote the Suffolk Resolves. He wasn't somebody who just led a group called the Sons of Liberty. He wasn't just that guy. He was a guy who got down in the trenches with people, and that's what happened to him at 34 years of age. He finally was killed at Bunker Hill, or Breed's Hill, actually, leading a retreat in one of the craziest and most interesting battles of the Revolutionary War, Michael, because technically they lost that battle, but they caused such overwhelming casualties against the British that the British said, if we win more battles like this, we're going to lose the war. Anyway, Michael, he took a musket shot to the head, helping his men, and he could have, as a general, stayed in the rear and commanded the men from the rear, but he went right to the trenches with them and fought. I love this guy. I think he's amazing. Let's talk about him a little bit.
So, first of all, he was an actual doctor, a highly respected physician. He treated patients during the smallpox epidemic. He was one of the heads of the Sons of Liberty, along with Adams and Hancock. He helped facilitate, he actually made the critical decision to send Paul Revere on the famous ride. And he, like you said, he died at the Battle of Bunker Hill, but it's on Breed's Hill. But there's this quote that I saw from him today that I just thought was absolutely phenomenal. He says, and this is in 1772, he says this: "May our land be a land of liberty, the seat of virtue, the asylum of the oppressed." Now, compare that to the send them all back, round them up in ice raids, get them out of the country.
There is no comparison. Yeah, there is none.
Right. But this was a guy who actually risked his life. Gave his life ultimately. Didn't have to. He could have stayed out of the fight. Went into the fight. He responded to the intolerable acts. The intolerable acts were passed in response to the Boston Tea Party. There were 5 of them, but really 4 because one of them wasn't punitive. There was the Boston Port Act, which closed Boston Harbor to all shipping until the East India Company was compensated. There's the Massachusetts Government Act, which altered the royal charter in limited town meetings. The Crown put in their own governor. The Administration of Justice Act, which allowed British officials or soldiers accused of capital crimes to not be charged in Massachusetts, but to go back to England, basically to escape justice. And then the Quartering Act, which expanded earlier laws which allowed British troops to be housed in unoccupied buildings, barns, or other facilities, and potentially private homes if needed along, all of the colonies. In response, he wrote the Suffolk Resolves, and the Suffolk Resolves, I have it here to give a nice description of them. They were a militant declaration of resistance. Now, they still pledged loyalty to the king, right? They were still, saying we're still loyal to the king. They weren't at that phase yet, but it was passed on September 9th, 1774, and it declared the intolerable acts unconstitutional and urged colonists to refuse tax payments, boycott British goods, and raise local militias. Look, you do this, you're risking execution for treason, right? You're talking about guys that not only had brains, but had balls. And again, I'm reminded of Arnold Rothstein's line in the movie Mobsters. I don't know if he really said it. Arnold Rothstein was a real person. But they were talking about going after the other mob bosses. And Arnold Rothstein says, balls and brains, if you got them, you don't need armies. And, it's guys like Joseph Warren that give the truth to that. I mean, yes, he gave his life. He gave his life for what he believed in. And he also believed in the right things. Great guy.
Yeah, Michael, a lot of current historians, particularly on the left, will denigrate the accomplishments of the founding fathers for a number of reasons, because, of course, the society was a mixture of liberal ideas and old world concepts of feudalism and aristocracy, and in some respects the founders fell into that, but in lots of respects they grew into classical liberal ideals, which were completely novel at the time, Michael. And you cannot you cannot overstate how incredibly brave the signers of the Declaration of Independence in fact were. At some point in the fairly early stages of the revolution, when the British were getting the upper hand, they asked, I think Howe asked for a parley with representatives of the Continental Congress, and I believe John Adams went there along with Ben Franklin, and they were offered a deal by the British for an immediate cessation of hostilities and to a return to being subjects of Britain, and they refused. They refused. Now they could have had everything that they wanted, being an upperclassmen, relatively well off, in the elite of their generation, but they refused. And Howe, I think, considered that quite a powerful thing, because all the men that came to the delegation, I don't remember how many there were on the Majesty's list for being executed. So if the war was not successful, they were going to hang. And they knew this. When they said, no more, we're not going to take your deal, they knew that their lives were literally on the line. Every single person, with their 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, all of them were slated for execution if that war did not go in our favor. They all knew that they were going to lose their property, their lives for this cause. And look, that's an incredibly daunting phenomenon, Michael, to stand in the face of the great superpower of the age, knowing that you're just a provincial power, knowing that you're outgunned, outmanned in a way, and have few resources in essence. They also knew that they had lots of advantages too in some ways, but there was no guarantee that they were going to win. And to stand in the face of this incredible risk and to stand for the principle of liberty over their own aggrandizement, over their own power, is amazing. And we need more people like this in today's world.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So the question yesterday is, can we reclaim a word once it's lost? Greg Doherty says reclaiming a word, impractical. However, with critical words, e.g. selfish, it may be required. For liberal, the fight could be useful, e.g. highlighting nature of a politician, but it's unlikely to recover the word. Persephone says the short answer is no. Long answer, technically, there's some chance that it could, but it is extremely unlikely and would require a concentrated effort by an extremely large group of people, and it would take a long time, probably generations. With words like selfish or liberalism, the chance is so low as to be effectively zero. So my capitalist thought of the day, I'll actually do it today. Fighting for freedom takes both intelligence and courage. We need both. There are people out there who degrade people. They're willing to violate principles in pursuit of the things that they want. Actually, fighting for liberty means upholding principles, upholding the things that you stand for, standing up for the rights of everybody, not just the people you happen to like. It means protecting freedoms that you may not agree with the actual actions, but you understand people have the right to do them. You don't want to be one of these people who can be called a hypocrite. In short, in a world full of Donald Trumps, be a Joseph Warren. And with that, I turn it over to Mark. And Mark, you have to ask the question.
I love that. That is great. Hopefully this question gets some traction. It's a bit of a political one, but do you think that there should be a constitutional amendment separating economics and politics? And do you think it would be possible to get that in the world that we live in today? So go to YouTube and answer that question, please. Also remember to like and subscribe to this channel because
share.
Please share across social media platforms because this algorithms like that kind of stuff, and we think this message has to get out there to lots of people, man. So, Michael, it's Friday, so you're going to do a show tomorrow on the Saturday edition of Capitalist Corner.
Yes, with Megan Ribbons, all about John Dewey. And at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time today on the Rational Alternative channel, Persephone and I will be doing the Everyday Ethics show. I'm sure Persephone will have a great topic. She always does.
Yeah, so you got the weekend, folks, in a UFC fight at the White House to think about your premises. And I'm going to see you here on Monday because now I'm back in town. I'm no longer on the Dark Continent. I'm back in the U.S. of A., which I love, despite the fact that it's disintegrating around us. I think we hold the foundation of truth, liberty, and reason that will reverse the tide right now, folks. So please check your premises. Peace.